For us, Grow and Convert just has this engine going. We started that engine with no SEO. There is something to just growing your brand. If you wanted to buy an exercise bike, what's the first brand you think of?
Peloton.
Right.
To take it a step further, I mean, if we just think about now going into the future, I think it's all those queries, all the top of funnel queries that everyone has gone after.
Moving to AI.
Yeah, like look at what's happened. The SERP is now all AI overviews.
So obviously Grow and Convert is known for our obsession with bottom of funnel content marketing. And today I wanted to introduce a topic and have a discussion with Benji, kind of playing devil's advocate and talking about some thoughts I've had recently about actually the importance of what I'm going to call brand marketing, which I know like different people call it different things. Some people mean that tactically, like brand marketing is like this type of paid advertising or media buying. I don't mean it in that way. I mean it in the sense of the power and importance of having created a brand for yourself and thereby getting customers, leads, visits, whatever your first customer point is. For us, it's just like a lead. Getting it from sources that are unattributable or are very kind of opposite of what we normally do for clients and proselytize, which is like very traceable bottom of funnel. We ranked for this keyword and that brought in one lead. Brand, I'm considering brand marketing being someone reaching out to us and saying, and we ask, how did you hear about us? And them saying, gosh, I don't know. I've been reading you guys for a long time, or like a friend mentioned or whatever, right? We're just like when they need a content agency, somehow we were top of mind, that kind of marketing. The story that I told Benji that got us to want to like record this as an episode because we thought it'd be really interesting is I was contrasting this with the CRO agency that I had when I met Benji and we started discussing, and that I have kept running in a small capacity. And it has 1 or 2 running clients or 2 to 3 running clients for the past couple years. My focus is on Grow and Convert. And as a result, the marketing engine is at a standstill on that CRO agency. It's called Growth Rock. We do A/B tests for e-commerce companies. And we recently, one of our like kind of legacy clients that we had from just relationships before, just churned. And some discussions were had about, do we replace it and how do we replace it? And I thought, man, there's like, what do I even do if I want to get leads again there? In the sense that like, I have some SEO rankings from doing that. Like we ranked number 1 for e-commerce CRO agency, and like some leads come in, but unlike Grow and Convert, it's just like, I would just, what would I do if I wanted just a couple of clients there? We don't have a capacity for more. I don't have capacity for more. It's just a couple of clients. And I thought, well, this is the difference, is that with Grow and Convert, even if your concrete tactical marketing channels aren't working, even if you stop all paid stuff, even if you sort of magically just removed all of our organic rankings, like there's just this, I don't know what to call it, like this running inertia. The flywheel is running where you're going to get leads from people who just knew of you from years ago because you were doing things.
A good example of that is I was actually looking at Ahrefs right before I went to grab lunch, and I was looking at our own rankings, and I was really surprised to see that we get 200 monthly visitors just from people typing in Grow and Convert. I mean, I know you remember when we first started and we were like looking at that, and obviously when we were looking at Ahrefs, it showed no search volume. So I don't know, over the course of 7-8 years, I feel pretty good about seeing 200 monthly searches coming from that. And then I was looking also at Pinpoint SEO now gets 50 monthly searches. And so you're right, like even if we stopped actively publishing new articles, we have been able to build a brand over the last 7, 8 years, where we could continue to get leads without actively doing stuff.
Yeah. The other example that came to mind is ClearScope. So like we've done some of these kind of webinars with Bernard, the founder of ClearScope. How did we even hear of ClearScope? Did you know him or something?
I got introduced to him when we were making the transition from doing more promoted content to SEO.
Someone said to go talk to him.
Yeah, someone said to talk to him, and then I remember I scheduled a demo with him just to see the tool, and I was just really impressed by his thought process. And so I think I went to grab lunch with him when I was still up in San Francisco, and that's kind of how we first met.
Yeah, and I was thinking like we had them. They were a client of ours for a little bit, and I was thinking about how in their little niche of SEO tool space of like on-page optimization, it, they just have built like a little bit of a brand for themselves. Like people know it, and that I don't think he like did like he didn't like do marketing like activities to do that. He just kind of had a good product.
A good product, and no, he did webinars. That was the key way that he grew. So by bringing in other SEO people in the space, interviewing them over webinars. I mean, we've done a couple of those, and then promoted it that way, and that's definitely helped the
But he
build the
definitely
brand.
didn't do bottom of funnel. He didn't like rank for like on-page SEO tools. I mean, we tried to do some of that for them when we engaged for a while. So he hadn't done that. And then for us, what you're saying and what I was saying, like Grown Convert just has this engine going. We started that engine with no SEO. I don't know if people know this, but like we at the beginning we shied away, not shied. We like actively tried not to do SEO. We had this bias that we thought like good content marketing was this like storytelling or whatever. But as a result, even before there was an agency, when it was just us and a website, it was like we were just like writing this kind of like interesting topics. And so I thought to myself, like I've just been having these thoughts of, like we kind of poo-poo this top of funnel stuff a lot, and we've done bottom of funnel, and like don't get me wrong, I can defend it to my dying day. Like we have the data to defend it. Like our whole business is built on it. It works. You find keywords where people are looking for what you're doing, and you rank for it. Even I started this conversation talking about my CRO agency, Growth Rock. We get leads from ranking for e-commerce CRO agency. And if I had 10 of those rankings for other terms, we'd probably get more leads, right? So like, I'm not saying that doesn't work, but it made me think, there is something to just growing your brand. Like I always thought, whenever I watch like the World Cup and I see those ads on the like side of the soccer field, it'll be like PepsiCo or whatever. I'm always like, man, like how much does it cost to buy that ad on like that side where like the ball goes out of bounds and it hits that thing? And how could you possibly justify that spend? Like it probably costs a bajillion dollars to buy that little like billboard. I'm like, who cares? But I think the point is like that's brand marketing is like when it comes time, if you have that brand recognition, you're there. If people just know ClearScope is one of the key tools, if I need to do like on-page optimization, you're there.
I mean, I have so many things to say. Where do you want me to start?
Go.
I,
Yeah.
I think the first thing that I would say is just making the distinction between not being against top of funnel. First of all, I think the idea is to focus on the bottom of the funnel first and then go broader. The reason behind that thinking is mainly from my past experience in startups. So if you think about joining a company as like the head of marketing or just starting out as the head of marketing, you're tasked with driving ROI quickly. Like you need to prove your value quickly. And so there's two ways that you can approach it. And there's kind of two schools of thought. There's let me grow top of funnel, which is let me get our name out there and then slowly move people down the funnel to where they're ready to buy. And then the opposite thinking was I was just thinking that takes too long. Okay, so yes, I could create billboards, I could do podcast advertising, I could do all that kind of stuff. But there's already people that are searching for exactly what you do. So if you can show up when they're looking for a solution and just educate them that you're the best solution, that's going to be a faster path to ROI. Now, where I think top of funnel comes in is, yes, bottom of the funnel keywords and maybe even just certain marketing channels are only going to get you so far. So take content marketing. One, there's going to be some sort of limited set of bottom of the funnel keywords that you're going to go after. And naturally, over time, as you exhaust those, you're going to have to move up the funnel to keep expanding the addressable market that you can go after.
Well, I wanted to object to something you said. Like, I think you said top of funnel is slower. Maybe. Let me ask you a few questions. If you wanted to buy an exercise bike, what's the first brand you think of?
Peloton.
Right. If you wanted to rent a house in LA, what's the first brand you think of? To what site you go to?
Yeah, Airbnb.
Yeah, I mean, so
But okay, this is a good point because there's a
counter I was
difference.
gonna say is maybe it's just expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive. These are good points because I think this is decisions that people have to make inside their business. One, those arguments are only for the consumer side, and I do think if you're focusing on doing marketing for consumer businesses, yes, the strategy is different because brand will make a huge difference because
No, but I think the same thing with B2B tools.
no, your addressable market would be way bigger. And again, I'm just saying when you're starting out, this approach makes a lot more sense to me because my argument back would be if you're going to start just with top of the funnel, you're going to spend a lot of money quickly and potentially not get an ROI for it, especially the companies that haven't found product market fit yet. So imagine you didn't have product market fit. You're spending all this money on billboard ads. You're doing podcasts. You're doing TV ads, and you're just spending money. Yet you don't necessarily know how to sell your product yet or sell your service. Like you're wasting a ton of money doing that and not getting a ton of feedback quickly.
That does make intuitive sense to me.
And so that doesn't make sense. Whereas if you're focusing on a smaller group of people and you're getting feedback much faster, and then you're starting, okay, and then once you figure out that product market fit, and then you start either growing from the bottom up or you expand to new channels, that makes a lot of sense. And so I think it's just a function of what the business is, where the business is at, do they have product market fit, and all those things tie into what strategy you take to grow. And I'm not arguing that top of funnel first even has no place. I just think for most businesses starting, especially bootstrap businesses where they don't have a ton of cash, they're not like some VC company, they're not some like Peloton that has millions or billions of dollars to spend. Like you have to take a different approach. And I think the approach that most people think, which is to start on the top of the funnel and do all these different marketing activities, a lot of it stemmed from like the 2010 to 2014 era of marketing where everyone looked to those VC backed companies. Everyone was looking to Airbnbs and Ubers and what was their marketing playbook? Oh, like Dropbox had this hack. It's like, you can't copy the same marketing strategy that those companies had because they had an unfair advantage with the amount of cash that they had. The way that they got to market was by spending money. But for your small SaaS business or your bootstrapped agency or any of those type of businesses, you don't have that type of cash to spend on just marketing without seeing a return. And so the strategy is just being more strategic early on in terms of how you acquire those customers and then expanding from there. And so when we were early on, we didn't need a ton of customers. We didn't need a huge pipeline. We just needed a couple here and there. And so the approach that we took worked for that stage of our business. Now we're at a different point. We have some capacity. Like we've gone after a bunch of keywords and we're starting to think of other ways that we can grow to keep growing our pipeline because we have more employees to give work to, and we're trying to grow the business at this point. And maybe one channel, I mean, we could keep doing one channel forever, but maybe now it starts to make sense to expand beyond just one channel and test other things and keep growing.
Okay, a couple things. First of all, before we move on from this point, I do think my analogy of brands that just have instant recognition applies equally to B2B.
For sure.
If I said, you're the head of sales for some company and you need a CRM, who do you think of? Everyone's going to mention Salesforce. first, right? If you say
Yeah,
like you're
but
hosting a website, like what are you going to think of?
but
You'll
but the
mention what?
pushback is, how did they start and how much money did they have when they started?
Fair.
Because I would say a lot of those brands that you think of, they didn't start by doing all the things that you're thinking of
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I agree. So then that leads to my second point, which I think this, so far, our conversation has moved into, and a lot of what you're saying is about marketing channel selection. And I want to make a distinction here. I started off saying, man, it sucks that my A/B testing agency has no brand recognition. And I'm contrasting that with Grow and Convert that does have some brand recognition at least. And I'm realizing that when you have this kind of brand recognition, you almost just get free leads.
Yeah,
Like it's
for
not
sure,
really
for
free because
sure.
like obviously they heard you at some point, but like when you just get some person that's like, I'm not sure, I've just been following you guys for a long time, I consider that a free lead, right? And so let's distinguish between the goal. Like there's this idea of like maybe I'm mistaken in calling it brand marketing. And let's call it
No,
like having
I
a brand presence is the
yeah,
goal.
sure.
And you're talking about which marketing channels, which is like what you do. It's like the activity to achieve it. And I think you got to think of these as two separate things. Like what I'm talking about is like the end goal. You can achieve it in different routes.
Yes.
And you're talking about channels and investments. And yes, like I totally know,
Well, I
especially
think there's a sequence to all this stuff. Like even on the brand side, I think as a company, you need to know what you stand for in your space and what's different. Like brand really comes back to your position. Like for us, even in the early days, like put what type of content we did aside versus SEO versus more just
yeah,
thought
yeah. Put the
leadership, like
tactical
stories.
channel aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We knew what we wanted to do in the space differently from anyone else from the very beginning, and that hasn't changed, which is if you go back and read the first blog post that we ever did on our site, it's about this narrative that most people are investing in content marketing but not seeing any results from it. And and it took us years to figure out all those reasons and to come up with a process to actually solve this, but that idea has stuck with the business ever since we first started. It was putting our foot down and saying, look, all these people are just kind of doing content haphazardly. There's no strategy. There's no way to measure things. There's no way to promote it. And we're going to figure out a better way to do it. That was the first piece that we ever wrote. And and so I think step one is to have like, what is that problem that you're solving or something that you're doing differently in the space? For a consumer product, it might just be that, like for Coke versus Pepsi, the taste is different. The ingredients are different, something like that. Like you have to be known for something first. So you have to put your foot down and say, this is why we're better. And that's step one. But like, if you don't have that, it's going to be really hard to grow a brand.
Yeah, what you said last, I think, is what I most agree with. Like you started off saying the fundamentals or something, the foundation of the brand is your differentiation. I would asterisk this because I would argue that there are consumer brands that are basically non-differentiated. And like you said earlier, they pay their way into brand recognition
Well,
or something
there's
like
different
that, right?
levels of differentiation. It doesn't need to be my product is completely different. Like Coke and Pepsi, like a lot of people can
Like they're not
argue,
that
they're
different.
very
But,
similar.
like, but
Yeah.
there's even like third party stuff. There's like Fanta, especially in I'm about to go to South Asia. Like Fanta's like huge, right? But like it's like are those things really different? There's like a bunch of orange soda. Like I would argue, for example, speaking of growth rock, we had this like memory foam mattress company back in the day before like nowadays you can buy any memory foam mattress online, and we saw this explosion of VC money to like the Caspers, Tuft and Needle, then Purple, then Lisa, and now it's like you can go on Amazon and get a legit high quality memory foam like mattress for like $250, right? And so I would argue they're not really that differentiated. Purple's like we have this like mesh thing, and like what does Casper say? Like does anyone, if anyone you think of Casper mattresses, can anyone cite a reason why they're differentiated? No.
Are they still even around? I don't even know that.
No,
But
yeah,
no,
they're
but for a lot of those companies, the brand is the differentiator.
Yeah.
That like the marketing is the differentiator.
yeah.
And so when you're in a highly commoditized space, your marketing will be the differentiator. Like even now, if we bring it back to our space and talk about like tools, there's a lot of different SEO tools that like all have the same features. Yet their marketing can be a differentiator in terms of why you use them. Or even marketing agencies is the same thing. Like,
But to go on to not forget what you're saying, the way I wanted to rephrase what you said instead of foundation is, I think your positioning, it can be an accelerant. That's the phrase that came into my mind. If you don't have some differentiation, like you're saying, you can just kind of spend your way and like create, like hire some agency or whatever. Like I know that Casper, from being in the industry, Casper, I believe I've been told that they worked with like a brand name branding agency, like a big time branding agency that's done that for a bunch of brands. So you can just kind of like do that. But if you have a differentiator, and Benji's right, it doesn't have to be product. Especially like a lot of people that listen to us and stuff are in the SaaS tech world, and they think like, okay, what feature? When they think differentiator, they're like product. It could be like, can we say this? Like back in the day, were Drift and Intercom really that different feature wise?
that was the first thing that came to our mind. That's a perfect example of one.
Why don't we say the example before you go into those details, like
Okay.
just so people
Yeah,
to
I
catch
mean,
people up.
basically, Intercom took more of the product approach in the very beginning, just creating a good product, and they were first to market. And then Drift came and they created a category called conversational marketing, and then basically changed the way people thought about doing it, even though the tools were very similar in
Yeah,
terms
for
of what
people
they
who don't
actually
know,
did.
both tools were like back in the day. They were some of the first. I don't know if they're really first, but like first well known of those little like kind of chatbot. Is that they're probably, if someone from there are listening, they're probably gonna like object to how I'm positioning this. But it's like basically that little like widget chatbot, and now it's like ubiquitous. But they were two big ones, and Intercom was one of the earliest ones where like you could do it and it would send to email. Like now it all seems like obvious, but back then they were one of the first ones. And then Drift got market share, and feature wise, it felt to me as an outsider like identical or very, very close. But go ahead. So then they dubbed this term conversational marketing
Yeah,
or something.
and I think Dave played to his strengths of focusing on building a brand
Dave
and
Gerhardt.
doing marketing in that way. And again, that's where I make the case. Like, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think it depends on the strengths of your company and who's in that marketing role, and that's probably going to determine what approach you take to grow your business in the very beginning, or the strengths of the founders. Like had you had a different background, like let's say you came from an ad agency, like we probably would have grown the business completely differently, or in the beginning you would have played to your strengths and done ads in a different way. Like there's so many businesses that were like launched with a Super Bowl ad. Like they put all their budget into doing one thing and making like a really creative commercial where your marketing again is your differentiator, and you get known in the space for having really good marketing. Like you could just think of like the beer companies back 20 years ago, like Budweiser and all those during the Super Bowl commercials used to look forward to those because they had such creative ads, and that was the way that you knew the brand.
Yeah. So let's anchor back. So if we're saying, okay, we revise what I started off saying by saying, okay, Davish, like yes, everyone would agree in marketing. The ultimate goal is to have a recognized brand because it becomes this like hack, this like superpower. You're not as reliant on each channel. Then I think what we're gravitating towards is this idea of, okay, of course, that's the end goal. How do you do that? And it sounds like what we're gravitating to is there's actually a lot of different ways to do that. So if we go back to like what it's making me think of is if we go back to Bernard and ClearScope for a second and us. Bernard and ClearScope, yes, he used webinars, but his differentiator was one, the product at the time was pretty cool. Now I think there's a lot of those like we analyze the SERP and then there's like we find what the entities or keywords are that the top 10 results are doing, and we'll make a list and you can use them. But I think at that time it was novel, it was clean, like it was like a good product, so it actually worked. And then his superpower he laid on top of that, or his differentiator, was his own deep knowledge of SEO and his kind of like skill, ability, and interest. He had like a passion for it. And his passion sounds different than the way I deliver it or whatever. And he did these webinars that do it. And that's exactly analogous. And so hold on for a second. So then what I think it would be nice for the audience to realize is that's not like to me, to me, my interpretation is that's not a standard channel. It's not the way a lot of like kind of big company marketers or just kind of like the textbook marketing way, what you would think, which is like, oh, you're marketing, so you're using a paid channel, Google, Facebook, SEO, like TikTok. It's like it's none of those things,
Yeah.
right? And so
But,
it's a little
but
bit.
but Bernard is the perfect example of that because again, I think it goes back to what I said. It's the skill set of the founder. So his positioning or his uniqueness is his deep knowledge of SEO and his own expertise having done consulting in SEO for larger companies. And so doing webinars was his way of conveying that expertise and doing his own demos. Like I remember how impressed I was when I got on the demo call. I was like, I've never heard the founder of a software product have this much deep knowledge about a space beyond even their own software. And so I think the way that he marketed and sold his product played into his strengths as a founder and his business.
It makes me think you need to think about what could be our wow moment. So that was his. I don't know if he thought of it consciously. He listens to these, so he might tell us. But like, at least I think he listens to these. Uh, but it happened to be. So the analogy to it happened to be like his strength, and the wow is like you get on a demo with him and you have that reaction you have. I think you told me to get on that demo. I was like, what the hell is this? What is this tool? And the moment you're talking to him in a demo, even if you're not thinking out loud consciously, wow, you're paying attention. Because like he has this right, it's like really interesting, and it has this kind of differentiator. You're right that no other product demo is like that. It's usually by some salesperson, and they're just trying to like pitch you stuff or whatever. And I think our analogy of that is that what we knew our strength was like writing this stuff and having like these strong opinions and lines in the sand on this. And so that's what we did. And then you hit on a good like subtlety, which is it's advice for smaller companies. It doesn't really necessarily apply for bigger ones, but like you got to align your natural preference and strength to this. So if we had tried to build a Casper style brand where our website was like the prettiest website and like the logo was amazing, like we're like approaching 10 years in and we built a decent business and people still complain that our logo is like bad. I'm like, whatever, like that's our logo. Like that wasn't our natural thing. And so our natural thing was writing. And so we did that and we took these strong stances and we had beliefs, and one of my natural things was data. And so the convert part of Grow and Convert, we were talking about conversion rates from like a million times.
From the very beginning, I remember
Yeah.
one of the first posts was your post on different conversion. What is it like?
Conversion
Like,
rates from blog posts to like,
yeah, that.
yeah, and people.
Yeah, but like
people
even
loved it.
different ways that you could convert people from blogs.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But I do want to touch on content for a second because I do think we need to explain even just the thought process and why not really focus on top of funnel SEO content from the beginning. Because you're right, from the very beginning, we did more, I would say, like thought leadership, like opinion pieces, where we would just talk through our opinions on a specific topic in the content marketing space, and then back up the opinion with data or stories or some sort of argument in the piece. And that is what grew our brand. And most people would consider that as top of funnel. And I would too. And that was a way that we grew our brand, and we had a great way to promote it in the very beginning. When we switched to SEO, the strategy changes. It's not to say that those type of pieces that we did in the very beginning are not valuable anymore. We still do them. We still write opinion pieces and promote them in various ways. But when it comes to SEO content, the strategy is different because you don't have as much uniqueness in that piece. It's really hard to tell your story. Like imagine we did an SEO piece on like what is content marketing? Like what are you going to write on that topic
Yeah.
that's super differentiated?
Yeah.
And like this in the SEO space, this is what most people were doing. They were going after like these what is keywords, or they were going after, I don't know, like just really broad keywords. And it doesn't really give you a space to tie whatever that concept is back to what you're selling, or describe in any way what's unique about the way that you approach it. And so
And in general, To a slightly different point is it's just not impressive.
Yeah,
If
it's
what
not.
we're saying before, I think we're getting somewhere. We're saying, look, you need some nugget of wowness, the wow that we said Bernard had at ClearScope, right? Like you need something, and we concluded it doesn't need to be your product feature. It can be. Dropbox is an example of that, right? It can be, and we can talk about that in a second. You need some kind of wow to tie into what you're saying. At least I'm going to put words into your mouth, but what you reminded me of is like top of funnel content, traditional top of funnel SEO now is not wow stuff because it's so lame and boring. Like it's just like what is this? What is content marketing or something? It's just like you look at just Google one of those phrases in your space, in our space, and then just read the posts. Just Google what is content marketing and read the posts. They're all the same. They're all basic. They're just beginner level. And so that's not going to be where you find your wow moment, where customers are going to be like, "Oh my god."
To take it a step further, I mean, if we just think about now going into the future, I think it's all those queries, all the top of funnel queries that everyone has gone after.
Moving
Like
to AI.
the HubSpot, yeah. Like look at what's happened. All the SERP is now all AI overviews. Why? Because again, all that content, there's really not that much different. If you go look at the top
And that's
10
the Google
posts,
SERP. And
yeah,
then there's a bunch of people using ChatGPT and all for that instead.
yeah, exactly. But like definitional content is not going to be that different. Like, okay, you can change a few words here and there, but it's not going to be that different. You don't bring your own expertise and point of view into those type of pieces, which is why I just have never thought that made sense as a strategy. If you can focus on the things that people are buying first, and you can bring in your own expertise and differentiation into the arguments of that piece, that is content that will stand out. And again, it's not to say that you shouldn't do opinion pieces and things where you bring a controversial opinion and you promote it and you have like those more viral pieces. That's a great strategy. I just think as an agency, it's really hard to extract those opinions from the company because often they just they haven't, like when you get really large as a business, the VP of marketing or the VP of sales, maybe they have strong opinions, but it's really hard to get consensus in the organization on an opinion that you want to share publicly. And so it either needs to come from the founder.
It's got to be a founder, and you're right. It's mostly like either small companies, or if it's a big company, it's a founder or CEO that happens to have a passion for having.
Yeah,
those
that's what I was
opinions.
gonna say. It's their skill set. Like they enjoy doing this,
Yeah.
and so they're always thinking and
Right. Like the
pontificating on
Basecamp
new
guys. They kind
Yeah,
of do
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Perfect example of like founders who have that kind of persona where they're always sharing these new ideas and things. But like not everyone is like that. And they're not always thinking about their industry and ways to innovate. Like they're just focused on growing their business, or they're focused on the operational components of their business. They're not natural marketers where they have all these new ideas. And it's really hard to extract those from those types of people. So in terms of our approach and our strategy that we can do repeatedly across companies, the bottom up approach makes more sense from an SEO perspective. And again, it's not to say bottom of the funnel content is the way that you should do all types of content marketing. Like our podcasts are not about like what is the best content marketing agency and us talking about it, because again, it's a different channel and you need to approach it a completely different way.
No, hold on. The podcast is a good thing. Why are we doing this?
Because we wanted to challenge ourselves to test out a new channel. I think for us, or at least for me, I kept seeing how a lot of the learning that I was doing was moving to video and to podcasts. Like I noticed a lot of my own time learning about trading and finance was moving more towards podcasts because it was easy for me to pop in headphones and listen to a podcast in the morning while I was making breakfast or going on a walk or something like that and learning about something new. Noticing that if I'm changing my habits in that way from reading to listening, that we should probably test out a channel like that as well.
You answer that question of kind of like how literally like how did we think of doing this? What I meant is, and I'll answer it myself of like how does this tie into this today's conversation is like I think what we think our differentiator or like wow moment that can grow a brand is our ideas and our strong opinions about marketing, specifically content marketing and SEO. And we historically grew the business writing those down in written articles. And I think the story of how this podcast video could continue to be a marketing asset for us that builds our brand, even though, as you said, it's not bottom of funnel in that we're not recording these to rank for some term where people are literally searching for videos on how to do X. It's just general purpose.
Although we have thought of doing that.
Yeah, we have thought of that. And we were advised by multiple YouTube people that that's not a good idea. But anyway, that's a separate conversation. What we're saying is our ideas, our opinions are growing converts wow. And we're just shifting the medium. And then we tie to what you just said, which is you were sort of saying, hey, video and podcasts are becoming like this important thing from written. And so we're just shifting the medium, but we're still conveying the thing that we think when people read it. And by the way, wow doesn't mean like you've like fallen off your chair. It's just like something that makes you be like, ooh, like just like, hey, like this Bernard demo is like a little bit different, right? Or like
just having these interesting conversations in marketing and even challenging ourselves on various topics. Like not you and I don't agree on everything, and we can have differences of opinions, but like where else are these conversations being had? Like yeah. I hope they're being had here. So yeah. That was the idea.
But that's the story of how we think like this would grow it. So I think what's interesting, yeah, I didn't even go into this conversation thinking about it this clearly, but it's elucidated this. Like, for you to reach the end goal of having a brand that people remember, you need to have something memorable. Like, in hindsight, when you think of it, like, it's pretty obvious, right? And so, but what we're learning is that can be a wide variety of things. So we've talked about, like, our thought processes or whatever. Now let's do a couple other examples of big brands. I would say, for Dropbox, they're like, wow, or whatever, what was literally the product. And that's why I think it's silly when I've seen those things of like breaking down Dropbox's like referral thing or whatever, and people say like the hack to like do is like at the end, remember Dropbox back was like share it with a friend and you share this link and if they sign up you get 200 extra megabytes or some tiny amount in hindsight. But that's all fine and good. But the reason this thing exploded is because back then we were all using USB drives, and whenever you had your first Dropbox experience, you were like, "Oh my god!" Like it just showed up on your computer. This is amazing. Uber, same. When you first saw that Uber app and you saw the taxis running around, you're like, "That thing is coming to me, and I can see where it is." That was like, "Oh my god."
It's different for those, like people used to try to copy those businesses, thinking that the hack was the reason it worked, and it's not.
There's some underlying wow.
No, it's because it was truly a novel product, and as a user, you wanted to share it with your friends to be ahead of the curve. So like an Uber, if you were one of the first users, you're like, wow, I have this car service that no one's heard of, and they're incentivizing me to share it. I'm going to share it because not only do I get a benefit from it, but I actually look cool in front of my friends. If you had a shitty product and you have the same incentive structure, you're not going to share it. So those types of referral programs don't work. And so again, I think the marketing that you choose has to play into the competitive advantages of either your product or your team. So like if you have a certain skill set as the head of marketing or the founder, that's the approach that you're going to lead with to grow your company because you know how to do this better than anyone else. Or same thing, if you have a product that there's a certain feature that's really unique and you can get people to share that feature saying this is way better than how any other company approaches it in the space, that's probably going to work from a marketing perspective and like a referral program. But I think the mistake that a lot of people make is just looking at another company and looking at that tactic and saying, oh, I should do the same thing because it worked for this company. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. The reason you have to understand the reason behind why it worked for you to be able to approach it the same way.
Yeah. So if we list all the different ways people have built brands and kind of the wows, the more I think about it, the more there are so many different ways to get to that. So we have genuine product differentiation. Dropbox, Uber. When they came out, there was a wow. Airbnb kind of had that. Like there were other like couch surfing ones, but there was something about it that like when it came out, it was just like, it also hit like right time and place. So we'll leave those kind of consumer-y brands aside for a second, right? And then we're talking about like, Bernard Us. It was something about like the ideas expressed by the founders can also be your thing. So if you are kind of SaaS-ish, I think a trap, something you have to be really honest about is almost every SaaS company we talk to will say that their product is the best and that they have these differentiators. And we know from our seat, having talked to so many brands, it's not always true. Sometimes you look at it and you're like, dude, like literally everyone does this exact same thing. We have had some honest clients that say, look, we're not really differentiated. Like this is kind of a commoditized space. I actually appreciate that honesty.
I agree.
But you don't have to give up. That's not the only way is to be Dropbox and genuinely be innovative and like disrupt USB sticks or be Uber and literally disrupt like taxis that have been around forever. You can differentiate in other ways. Like the Drift example was a good one. They used the personalities and the skill sets of their CEO and CMO to come up with these concepts of conversational marketing and the kind of tactical channels of like their podcast and stuff to spread that word.
And even that doesn't work for every business. Like I had someone comment on LinkedIn the other week about they were angry that we created pinpoint SEO. They're like, oh, it's just the same thing that everyone else does. Okay, great. But like,
then you do it.
yeah, but if you can create a concept that becomes known, that is way more powerful. Again, playing into the brand part. If you can create pinpoint SEO and people actually start calling it that, like Brian Dean with skyscraper technique, that whole thing put him on the map just from creating a concept and a way of doing something. So there's a lot of power to that. But again, not everyone can do that. A lot of people coin their own term and it completely falls flat because you need to be able to execute on all the other things around it. Like for us, pinpoint SEO, okay, we wrote the article in 2018, I believe. And it probably took us 3 years to start getting that term become known and starting to generate search volume. How do we do it? It's you created the concept and all the other pieces that we did referred back to that concept. And it became the core concept that the agency used to grow businesses. And then you see multiple case studies of it working. And then you see people that follow us starting to use this process and it work. And then they tell their friends and it grows that way. But it like if we had just created that post and then done nothing else afterwards, like if we hadn't referred to it in case studies, if we hadn't had our like people that had taken the course using it, it wouldn't have worked and it would have fallen flat. All this to say, I'm not against top of funnel marketing at all. I'm not even saying bottom of the funnel content or bottom of the funnel marketing will work in every instance. And I think people often get that mixed up when they see some of our messaging is they're like, oh, you guys only do bottom of the funnel marketing. That doesn't work. No, it's like bottom of the funnel in a certain context. Like bottom of the funnel when you're starting out doing SEO, like if you're starting from scratch, this is going to get you way faster results going from the bottom up. And like there's been tons of businesses that have examples of them doing content and starting completely at the opposite end of the spectrum, like a HubSpot where they started at the top of the funnel and they grew that way and they just built a massive brand.
Yeah, let me say what you're saying maybe in a slightly different way. We're not saying we're against top of funnel marketing, but we are against top of funnel SEO content because we think it sucks. Like, and here's my defense of it, is like, we're fine with top of funnel marketing. These videos you could consider top of funnel marketing. The original pieces we wrote that were not targeting any SEO keyword for years. Pinpoint SEO now ranks for pinpoint SEO, but we created that search demand. And so it was not an SEO piece. It was just an idea.
Even when the post was published, we didn't even name it pinpoint SEO.
Yeah, no, you tried to like put a URL to have it rank for some random thing.
Yeah, it was like the URL was SEO content conversions, and it was like a completely different title of the piece. And then I think you might have come up with that. I don't even remember how we came up with the name, but then we came up with the name, and then we rebranded everything, and then
well, later, yeah. I think one of us was like, "Oh my God, there's search volume around this term." Anyway, to complete my thought, so we're saying top of funnel. We're against top of funnel SEO content, not top of funnel marketing, because top of funnel marketing can be done well. That builds a brand because it gives you a wow moment, but top of funnel SEO content, likely no, because it's by definition going after these like mundane keywords that you're going to write the same definitional nonsense. There's nothing wow about it. So like this takeaway is be brutally honest with yourself and think about your own strengths and your product or whatever. Where can I get, if you want to build a brand, where can I get this wow moment? It may be your product and features, but be careful. Like, is it really? You might be like, but our thing is a little bit faster, and be like, is this really a wow moment? It's like kind of commoditized. And if it's not, like first you have to stomach the pain of accepting that, and then when you like get over your grief, you can think, okay, like what else am I good at? What else is my strength? And there's people that have created brands from other things. I don't know if I have the time to do this, but now I have questions where I'm almost curious about the backstory of creating other brands. Like why did Peloton become so famous? I know it's a consumer thing, and we don't normally like do that much on, but like it's just it's a freaking bike.
Yeah, but they were the first to do they brought like the community. They had the TV screen. You could like yeah, but they were like the first to do that. I think that was the novelty of it is you could go on the internet and get trainers from on your bike, and so you could subscribe to specific trainers. Then there was like a community aspect of it, but and it was a COVID thing. Like the company blew up because of COVID, and then like no one bought a bike ever again.
It did, but it was also kind of famous before that, right? Like Zoom blew up.
It was growing, but then like look at their business. It like blew up, and then it just completely died because everyone had already bought a bike for COVID.
Yeah, that's it would be interesting to do some of those dissections as well. Like Zoom, like in COVID, why did Zoom take off and not Google Meets? I mean, that's just literally quality,
Because
right?
I think it was a better product. Like we had switched from Google Meets to Zoom like 2018 or something like that. Like really early on, just because we just always had issues with Google Meet. It was annoying to screen share. It was lagging all the time. And then this was really clear.
Yeah, like other questions like Webflow, what is their differentiator? I think that would be interesting to do some kind of dissection like this. But yeah, let me just kind of close with these takeaways. Of course, having a recognizable brand is good. That's the end goal of all marketing. Even bottom of funnel. If you do enough of what we're doing, where you show up for every single query, where people are looking for a product like yours, you're gonna get market share. And then I think, as you said,
I also saw this from Dave Gerhard the other day, and I thought it was really well said about brand. He's like, at the end of the day, brand is your reputation. It's how people know you. And I agree with that. And I think, yeah, any sort of marketing at the end of the day is meant to build your brand. It's to get people to know you. And it's not only to get people to know you, but it's also to get people to know you and what you stand for. I think that is important, especially when it comes to like more B2B stuff. Consumer is a little bit different because you can see the name and then you walk into a store and you're just like, oh, I've seen that before. But when it's in the B2B space, knowing how the product or the company is differentiated in the space is
how
the
it solves
difference.
your particular problem, how
Exactly.
it applies to you. Yeah, there's more like utility. Okay, so of course everyone wants a brand. And then we're saying that's different from the channel. There's a bunch of different channels that you can use to grow your brand, but it seems like we're saying you need some kind of wow moment. We've also concluded that if you have a genuine differentiator in your product or service, that's an accelerant. If you're kind of commoditized, you can still grow a brand.
Yeah, and the differentiator, all of your marketing should be built around that differentiator. If you truly have a differentiator, and this
built around or at least references.
For sure. And this is the difference between brands that are commoditized and not. If you have a commoditized product, like it's very similar to everyone else, your marketing needs to be your differentiation. You have to be in front of people's faces more. You just have to be like the one that shows up everywhere because that's the way you're going to attract customers. Or your pricing has to be cheaper. There has to be something different about what you're doing to gain market share. Whereas if you truly have a competitive advantage on the product side, or you do something as a service lean in on that. And that's what you need to promote in everything, regardless of the channel.
And then the other final conclusion that I think is really interesting is we're concluding from all these stories, there are a ton of different ways to get that wow moment. Some are wow their customers from the product or actual features. Some from what we can call like us and Bernard, I can call it like idea or opinion wow, like expertise wow, right? They're like, oh, this is like really interesting. It's like really differentiated. It can be straight up just like pretty brand wow, the Caspers of the world. Like, is the mattress really that different? But they just like straight up had the money to invest in that kind of thing. It could be like first to market wow, like the Pelotons of the world. It could be priced. We didn't talk about that. Walmart, like it's just like straight up cheaper for some of those consumer stuff. And then the last theme that I think people should remember is something you said that I think is poignant, especially if you're an early stage company. Make sure that whatever you're trying to lean into on the wow, you're expressing it in marketing activity activities, like the tactics, the channels that align with your natural interest. Because then you're likely to succeed. If you try to shove whatever you're doing into like a marketing activity that you don't like to do, or you're not good at, or is annoying for you, you're not likely to succeed. You're just not going to have that kind of passion to be able to pull that off.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. You can also get the audio-only versions of these shows wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us at growandconvert.com/newsletter for any articles and updates for when these videos come out.